Alright folks, today I'm going to show you how to make a 5x5 crafting table, or a 7x7 or 153x74, depending on how much time you want to put into it. I'm going to give you an example of a 5x5 for custom crafting. It won't do normal crafting things. You're going to have to program in a recipe for each item you want. So what we're going to do is make a 5x5 crafting table that will craft a nether star. And we're going to have to start first by making a block. We're going to call it an ender crafter. And I'm sorry, I haven't recorded anything in a long time, so it's not really set up, and you're going to hear a lot of clicking from my keyboard. We're going to use this texture here because it doesn't really matter. There are other tutorials that will show you how to use all these things. Rotation won't matter because all the textures are the same. We're going to give it a name. Render crafter. I don't care about the hardness. You can change all these things to your liking. The only thing I'm going to do is change this so it makes a sound when it's dropped. Not to a ladder. And we'll give it a little light in case it gets dark during the tutorial, which didn't save there. And I accidentally clicked on breaking. I don't think the rest of it matters. You can leave it to not be affected by silk touch. I don't think it really matters. We'll leave that at 1 so we can broken by hand. The tick rate down here, if you want it to be an instant crafting table, then leave it at 10 or make it lower. 20 ticks equals 1 second in Minecraft, so this is a half a second. So once it realizes that it has the correct recipe in there, it'll take it a half a second to check it and make sure all the blocks are in there, and then give you your output. If you want to do something like a furnace, you could change this to 100 ticks, and then it would take 5 seconds for it to do its operation. The only problem with that is you don't have any kind of anything in your GUI that's going to say that it's actually working. So if somebody puts in the right recipe and you set it to 10 seconds, it's going to take 10 seconds to come back around to check if the recipe is right and do the operation. So the user might think that they did it wrong and pull everything out before he even gives it a chance. So for now, I'm going to leave it at 10, just so it's mostly instant. We don't do anything with that. We do want to enable entity and inventory on this block. Now we're going to need a lot of spaces, because a 5x5 crafting grid has 25 spaces in it. Need at least 25 plus 1 output would be 26. So we can set some extras in here just to make sure we have enough in case we decide to add some other element to it. We're going to leave stack size at 64 so that they can put 64 items in each time, and drop items in inventory if the block's broken. That's cool. We'll leave that alone for now. So there's our block. Next thing we want to do is create a GUI. Of course, you can name these whatever you want. GUI type, we want it with slots so they can see their inventory. And I do want it to run into the background layer, and we have to pick our Ender Crafter block so that it uses that inventory that's already built into it. For this one, we're going to have to change our size. I don't like doing it this way. I hate that it adds the bottom part because it just looks silly. But we need at least around 470 to make sure we can get our 5x5 grid in here. And if you click down here at the bottom where it says snap components to the grid, we can count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gives us a good spot for our 5x5, and then somewhere over here we can put our output. Now, how you label these is going to be very important. You need to know which number's which. For instance, let me add 1 slot. We're going to leave it at 0 so as not to be confusing, and we're going to put it right up here in this top corner. That's 0, 0. The next one will be 1, the next one will be 2, and so forth. Now, how we label these is going to be very important. Now, I'm going to do this off camera because it takes a little bit of time, and I'll explain it when I come back. So I got most of it down. I got the first 4 rows. I'm finishing up the last one. You would simply hit input slot, and if you forget what number's next, you can look over here and see that I'm in 22, so I would put 23. And it is okay to leave the 0 in front of it. And 24, and that will be our last spot for our crafting grid. Now we need an output slot, which we'll click output. We're going to name this one 25 because this is the next one in there, and I'm going to give it a red color just for shits and giggles, and we'll place it right there. So this will be our crafting grid. This will be our output, and these numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even though they have a 0 in front of them, it's okay to use them in the procedure with just a 3 or a 4. And these will be the spots where we'll pick the items that need to be in slot 12 in order to get the output that we decide it to be. So that is our, I guess we can put a text label in there just for the fun of it. Oops, Ender Crafter, which I'm sure there's 14 different names. Something I saw in another video. So if you click on the RGB one and change everything to 64, you get the, when you do this, you might want to take the snap grid off so you can kind of place it where you want. We'll just put it down there. Let's call it Ender Crafter. We'll use that space for something. And that is the GUI. Now we want to go back into our block. We want to go back to this, to our procedures list. On block, right click. We want to add a new procedure. On block, right click is fine. Let's see if I remember what this one is. This is the problem I have with most of my procedures, is remembering where everything is. But under player procedures, we want to open that crafting grid, on right click. And you could, at this point, you could add a recipe for the block, which isn't important. You should be able to figure that out already if you're kind of into this space. There's other tutorials for that. The next thing we want to do is create our procedure for actually how the crafting grid works, and we'll call it Ender Crafter. Crafting, I guess, whatever makes you happy. With this one, I'm going to cut some stuff in and out because it's actually a very, 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 very long procedure, but it's very, very, very simple. It's just a lot of repeating steps. It's very, once you kind of see it and understand it, it makes perfect sense. And now we're going to do it. So we're going to start with a logic loop. We're going to get an if and do. We're going to go to our operators, and we're going to get the light blue one with the equal sign on it. We're going to change this to and. Now, to make this a lot easier for you to see, right click on it and do extend inputs. And we're going to duplicate this thing so many times. Each one of these slots here is going to be one item for one of those slots. So we need at least 25. So I'm going to set that up super quick and then come back. Alright, so it's set up here. I know this kind of looks crazy, but basically all this is doing is whatever goes to this top one here, whatever it's asking it to do, it's got to make sure it does this and this one, and then this one will do this one and this one, and then this and one, make sure that these four work, and so on and so forth into a giant tree where it has to collect 25 things before it can proceed. The if you don't know, this little thing is probably what makes a lot of mods work really well with this. Is the top one is, if this thing happens, do this thing here. So what we're starting off with is, if all the items are in the right place and are the right items in the crafting grid, then what we're going to do is output nether stars. So I know it's very hard to see and count, but there are actually 25 little spaces for us to add things. Those represent the 25 spots. So what we need to do is set up how we want it. And grab that bad boy there and go to block procedures. We're going to go get item from slot of inventory, and then the Minecraft components, and just get us one of these. Now get item from slot 0 in the inventory. So in the inventory of the block, in slot 0, which is the very first top left box in the crafting recipe, we're going to say what we want it to be. We want it to be, we're going to make a what would be an easy recipe to remember? That's how your example will come. So we'll make the first one a slime block. We're going to copy or duplicate this, put it in the second one, and we're going to make the second one, what did I use? A magma block. Sure, why not? But here, we're going to have to change this to slot 1. This will be the next one over from the top. For example, let's go ahead and pull our GUI up because it's getting hard to have it. So there's our slot 1. And according to this right now, slot 1 will be a slime. I'm sorry, slot 0 will be a slime. Slot 1 will be magma. So right there, slot 0, slime. 0, 1, magma. Then we have to duplicate this a lot. And there may be a better way to do this. I just don't know it. If there is, I'm sure somebody can point it out, but this seems to be the simplest, straightforward way. And you see I'm just removing these, so now we could duplicate this, move that out, put that in there. Let's duplicate it again. Let's pull that one out. We'll just stack these on top of each other so they'll be easier to get rid of later. Put that in the hole. So we can duplicate this one. Put that over there so we can throw it away later. And boom. Let's get rid of this. Again, this looks crazy and long and complicated, but it's really, really not. But we do need to add, this was 24 total going up that block, so we need to duplicate just one more and put down here for the 25th slot. Now we have to go through, starting at 0, 1, we'll have to renumber all these, 2, 3, and just go in order, so it's easier to. And there we go. Now we are going to do one little extra thing here for basically just some checks to make sure nothing really screws up. And take a look at that here in just a second. Alright, to do those checks, we are going to get some more logic operators. Oops. Get 2 more. We're going to move this last one out. And duplicate it. That one there. Don't really need that. We're going to do this one. We're going to set it to AND. So it gets that last block. And we're going to set this one to OR. And we're going to get some block properties. Actually, we're going to go to these operators and get the darker blue. And that's what I'm going to put him in there. We're going to get block procedures. Put him there. And we're going to get 0. We'll change this to 25, which is our output. We want that to be 0. Carry that bad boy. Gonna duplicate him. We're gonna change this to 25. And Minecraft components. Get him. Change him to whatever we're trying to craft, which is a nether star. Alright, and the purpose for these is it will do all this stuff, and it will make sure that either the output is empty, or the output has something, has the thing we're trying to craft. This way, without these in here, what this will do is it will check for all these items, and then it will just, down here on the do part, once it makes sure it has all the items, we need to remove them once the crafting is complete. So if there's nowhere to put an output, it just won't do it because there's nowhere to put it, and it will remove the items and we'll waste them all. So this little check here makes sure that it's either empty, which means proceed, or it has another star already, so go ahead and stack on top of it. Now the next part is what we actually want it to do. And what we want it to do, first and foremost, is we need it to remove excuse me, we need to remove all those items in each slot. Remove one from slot whatever in the inventory. So what we're going to do first is duplicate this bad boy because we need 25 of them. There's the 5. I'm going to show you a kind of quick way to do this. Let's get us a logic. Let's get us one extra one of these. We'll just put it down in there. We'll put it over here and we'll hit a duplicate. So now there's 5. And I'll just do this because, like I said, we need 25 of them, so I'll try to do it kind of fast. There we go, there's our 25. Now this, like I said, this looks complicated and very long and blah blah blah, but it's really not. It's just doing one thing and then repeating it a bunch of different times. So we will have to change these slot numbers so it gets the right slot, and I'll do that. So that should delete all the items in the crafting grid once the operation is complete. Now we need to actually set an output. So what we're going to do is set. That's what we want. To set it, what we're going to do now, if you just want it to be 1 for 1, leave that 1 there. Set this to a nether star or whatever your output is, and change this to the output slot, which is 25. What I want it to do is create a couple of nether stars. So what we can do here is get rid of this one. Actually, we'll use that again in a second. We're going over to math. We're going to take this, drop it in there. We go to block procedures. Slot 25. We're going to put that there. Use that to 25. And here we can make it whatever number we want to be. You could do this too and just make it 1. And if you change your mind later, say we want to make it output 5 nether stars. And that should be everything. So we can look at our recipe one more time, make sure we got everything right in there. Yep, so we're going to start with slime blocks. So once that compiles, we'll jump over into Minecraft and see what we get. Now before we go, I did forget to do one thing. Open your ender block up, back to your procedures, and on entity tick. We don't want to create a new one, we just want to do the ender crafting so that this actually does something when we want it to. Once it finishes, we can start. Alright, let's create a new world. We're going to make it creative. We're going to make it super flat. Decorative, and there's our ender crafter. Drop it down. There's our UI. And remember, it was every other one. Of course, this will be whatever you decide you want it to be. And as far as our order goes, it goes across the top, and then it starts down here and goes across, and then down here and goes across. So once we place our one block, boom, there's our crafting grid. Of course, it was pretty instant because we set that tick rate to 10. And I wanted to show you, like, you can't put anything in the output slot. We'd have to make another recipe, and then I could show you how it blocks, and it won't do anything if there's something in there other than what the crafting recipe is supposed to be. But that's pretty much it. The only other thing to show you is how to set a second recipe, which we'll do now. Back over in here, we would go to our procedure, which I already had open, but anyway, if you wanted to make another one, you would simply duplicate those, not delete them. Let's close it out without saving. Man, I'm just having a hard time here. There we go. Not delete, we want to duplicate. And it's going to take us a second, but we'll have to drag everything. We'd simply add it to the bottom of the first one, and then you would change all your items and where you want the recipe to be. It's going to have to be a shaped recipe, and then right here you would change what your output is so it can check and make sure that it's in there. And then down here you would change your output to what you want it to be, and right here would be how many. And I think that's pretty much it for the basic part. Then you know you do your recipe and all your other good stuff, anything else you want to add to it. And again, I think that's it. If I can help you out, let me know. Believe me, I kind of, you know, fuddled my way through it until I figured it out. But if you want, send me a message, I'll see what I can do. It's Madcock83. Have a good day.